age of 94, Judge Malcolm Mackey passed away peacefully at his Sherman Oaks home surrounded by his loved ones. From July 20th, 1929 onward, he embraced a life full of strength, laughter, positivity, and courage. He was often the heart and soul of a party, a courthouse, or a home. Mac, as he was affectionately known, led a life that was intimately intertwined with some of the greatest events of his era. He was born to Winifred Hamilton and William Mackey just 3 months before the start of the Great Depression and grew up in the New York City tenements. At 17, he had finally convinced his mother to let him enlist in the Marines, just in time to serve aboard the USS Midway at the tail end of the Second World War. This was first of many international trips. Mac was stationed in Italy, where he met Pope Pius VII. After his service, he graduated from NYU and was scammed into moving to California to pursue modeling. At the suggestion of Father Donovan, he instead pursued law at Southwestern Law School with fellow classmates, the future mayor Tom Bradley, businessman Don Sterling, and Don Gallagher, who would become his lifelong friend. A staunch advocate for democratic politics, Mac found himself face-to-face with Ronald Reagan, who he successfully sued several times over his career. He also stood on the side of figures like Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, and Muhammad Ali. In one oft-recounted story, Mac snuck into, out of, and back into again, the Democratic primary held at the Ambassador Hotel only moments after Robert Kennedy's assassination. While Mac traveled the world, there was no place he would have rather been than his courtroom. Since 1979, he has heard and ruled upon thousands of cases, dutifully serving justice to the people of California for nearly 45 years, arguing cases before the appellate and Supreme Courts of California, as well as the U.S. Supreme Court. He was re-elected by the people 11 times in his career, elected presiding judge of the Los Angeles Municipal Court, and serving as pro tem on the Los Angeles Court of Appeal. In addition to his professional accomplishments, Malcolm will be remembered for his warmth, generosity, and unwavering commitment to uphold the rule of law. He was a loving husband to his wife of 31 years, Rachel, a cherished father to his children, Michael, Christy, Andrea, and Malcolm Martin, a beloved grandfather to his grandchildren, Taya and Sasha, as well as a friend to Lola the dog. His passing leaves a void in the legal community, but his legacy will endure as an inspiration to all who had the privilege of knowing him. An interesting detail about Malcolm's heritage. His mother's family was from Ireland and his father's family from Scotland. As a result, Malcolm was a descendant of the famous Rob Roy of Scotland. At this time, I want to open up the service and invite up some very important speakers. I'd love to invite up Judge Hammock to start us off.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I kind of think it's fitting that Malcolm passed on April 1st. Because he had us all fooled that he was going to outlive us all. Pause for laughter. Okay, good. As you may know, Malcolm finally retired this January after 45 years in the court as a judge. Unfortunately, he passed, within less than 90 days from his retirement. The only thing I'm going to say is, I begged him to make sure you take the one lump sum payment and not the monthly annuity. But Malcolm could be stubborn, I kid. Malcolm would have loved that joke. It was one of the most wonderful, enduring qualities of Malcolm is that he had this great sense of humor. Because we teased him mercilessly in the lunchroom every day about his age, and he loved it, okay? As you may recall, some of you were at his 90th birthday celebration. And he asked me to give a roast. He actually said, Randy, how much are you give me a roast? I said, you sure now? You know, so, because he knew I was going to be teasing him about his age, all right? In fact, I could still see Malcolm. Now, every time we would tease him about his age, he'd go, oh, like someone stabbed him in his heart, you know? I found my notes for my speech, or my roast back at his 90th birthday. You know, I'm glad I kept them because I really don't remember much about that. Apparently, I might have had a few drinks before and after. But for those who weren't there, or for those who are willing to relive the experience, I'm going to tell you my top 3 favorite jokes that I gave during his roast. The first one was, first of all, I want to dispel the rumor that Malcolm's state bar number was 1. It was 6. And we used to always tease him in the lunchroom, what was it like to have court reporters with quill and ink? And then my favorite one is, you know, Malcolm and I sat in a civil court, like many of my colleagues here today. And there's these official jury instructions for civil trials, right? And in the back of it, there's a life expectancy table. I'm going to read an appendix. And we give it to the jurors because sometimes, you know, you not have to award future economic damages or future, you know. And so there's this life expectancy table, and you look at the, you know, male, female, gender, race, age, and it tells you the official life expectancy. And, you know, for fun, I just looked at Malcolm's that day. It said, settle today. I have no doubt that Malcolm laughed harder than anyone else about most of my jokes. I must confess, though, there was one joke I told about Malcolm's tie that he did not appreciate. And he came up to me afterwards, he goes, Randy, that was a little rough. That was a little rough, you know. So, in respect for Malcolm, I will never tell that joke again. But I have a new joke in place of it, all right? Did you know, sorry to tell you, Rachel, but many, many years before you, Malcolm dated Miss America. Yes. Of course, it was the 13 original colonies back then, so. Now, when Rachel informed me that Malcolm passed, we all kind of knew it in some ways, you know. And then she told me that it was his wish. I won't say it was his dying wish, but it was one of his wishes that I give the eulogy for him. And I was very touched about that. But I want to be clear, you know, I'm not giving this eulogy as the official representative of the Los Angeles Superior Court, because I'm not. But I'm merely one of its humble foot soldiers who served in the trenches of the day to day with Malcolm, all right? And I was blessed to serve with him for almost 10 years on the 5th floor at the Mons Courthouse. As I have said many, many times, I idolized Malcolm in many, many ways. Dedication. He was dedicated to our court. Nobody has been more dedicated to this court than Malcolm Mackey. Even into his late 80s and early 90s, you know, Malcolm and I sat in this very complex assignment, an independent trial court in Mosque, you know, where we hear cases involving hundreds of millions of dollars, very important cases, but he had the same caseload as everyone else. People that were half his age, literally. And he would show up every day on time, and I'd see Rachel walking him gingerly there to his courtroom and picking him up. You know, he was very conscientious, and you know, his dedication stands above all in my mind. Attitude. He had the best attitude. It was always a positive attitude. You know, he's always smiling, always joking, hey Randy, how's it going? You know, and he's always, you know, this was Malcolm. You know, hey man, what's going on? What's the word on the street? You know. So, last but not least, it was his common sense and his like street man sense of justice. You know, maybe he didn't go to Harvard like he always told us, right? The last time I saw him was Southwest. You know, it ain't Harvard, you know, but it provided him to do things that he could probably never imagine, and the impact that he had. you know, and he had that common sense and that sense of fairness and justice. You know, Malcolm was born to be a judge. I mean, look at this picture. Come on. That's, you know, his theme is from Hoboken to Hollywood. That was his. He was going to write a book, and I think that's what it was going to be called, because I mean, he just had that quintessential look. Fun fact: Malcolm, during the '60s, some of you are old enough to know, there was a television show called Divorce Court. Malcolm was on the divorce court several times as a real lawyer, and I think he had a SAG card. And so he appeared on many episodes in real life cases, okay? And so that's Malcolm. I mean, you can just see them. I wish you could find YouTube and find some of those episodes. Here's another fun fact. He was approached, you know, he was elected in the municipal court in 1978. And then he became the presiding judge of the municipal court in the 80s. And then someone approached him in the mid-80s, some Hollywood producer. Because look at Malcolm. He's got that TV, you know, look. He's got that perfect Hollywood look as a judge. And they offered him a job. But he'd have to retire. It's this little show called The People's Court. This is a fact. He was offered the position of the People's Court. And he turned it down because he did not want to retire from the court. And he didn't think it would work out very well. So they went to their second choice, another Superior Court judge, Judge Wapner. So Wapner got the judge. He was the second pick after Malcolm. And to his last days at mosque, I would always remind Malcolm, you know, hey, Malcolm, Judge Judy made $48 million last year. So he didn't use good judgment on that one. My last observation is love, the word love. Malcolm loved our court. I mean, he loved being a judge. That love is what drove him to come to court every day until he was 94 years old. All right? And he didn't want to leave. But he knew it was time. And Malcolm loved people. He loved people. To say that he was a people person would be a gross misunderstatement. He was the ultimate people person. And in family, last but not least, he loved his family. Everything he did, you know, was for the family. I used to speculate that, why are you staying so long? Because I thought maybe he had this huge life insurance policy, and if he died in office, you know, the family would get this big policy. But I don't know. But I just would say to the family, it's my fervent hope and wish that his memories, all those good memories, will be a blessing for you. All right? And I'm not afraid to admit it. I loved Malcolm Mackey. I really did love him. In many ways, he was a father figure to me. Of course, with the age, you know, the age proved it. Fun fact, Malcolm was born in 1929. I was born 29 years later in 1958. And guess what? 29 years from now, I'll be 94 years old. Rest in peace, Malcolm. You will be sorely missed. And I give you my solemn pledge that I'll do my utmost best to get the powers that be, the suits at mosque in our courthouse, to finally paint the outside of the mosque courthouse, which he's been railing at every meeting for the last 20 years. Of course, having it renamed after him might be a little bit more difficult. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next, I would like to invite